Hey guys, OJ Albina here, and Scarlet and Violet are pretty much out there, leaked completely on the internet. People are playing through the games, people have data mined the game, so we know move pools, abilities, stats, new Pokemon, everything you could want to know under the sun. We know it about Scarlet and Violet. I won't be going into major spoilers in this video. There will be some in the future that I will be, just a heads up. But today, I actually want to talk about some pretty big nerfs to competitive singles Pokemon, like staple Pokemon, that are really going to shape up this metagame and make things a lot different than they were in the past. I thought it was pretty interesting to talk about these. So yeah, if you guys do enjoy today's video, be sure to drop a like as well as sub to the channel. We're on our way to 2,000 subs. And I would really appreciate it. We're still doing our giveaway for Scarlet and Violet. This might be the last video. I think I'm going to go up until launch of Scarlet and Violet. So if I have any more videos after this, it'll still be entered in. And then I'll reach out to someone in the comments. So if you drop a comment, you're, entered into, be a part of that giveaway. And yeah, let me know if you guys want to see a part 2 where we talk about the biggest buffs this generation. Because a ton of Pokemon got buffed this gen. Whether it be from their move pools, abilities, stats, things like that. So definitely let me know in the comments below. Alrighty, that being said, let's go on to our first Scarlet and Violet confirmed information video. First up, we have Rillaboom, and I wanted to start with him because they gutted my boy. And I understand, I think it's probably because of VGC, and keep in mind, I think that Game Freak, they make these balance changes with VGC in mind, or with a little bit less so battle spot singles in mind. And I think this is definitely a VGC thing. Rillaboom was incredible in VGC for a ton of the different series and formats that they did in Generation 8. And I think they wanted to bring it down a notch. And they took they took its best move in Grassy Glide, because obviously Grassy Glide plus Grassy Surge, giving it that priority move in the terrain was incredible. That really strong stab priority move with terrain boost, but they also took away its best two means of hitting grass resist in high horsepower and superpower, whether it be fire types, whether that be steel types. It took away its best two ways of hitting common checks to it. So they really gutted Rillaboom here. I think this in Draft League takes Rillaboom from like a tier 1, top tier round 1 type pick to a straight up like tier 3 Pokemon. I don't know. I would still personally draft this thing over something like a Tapu Bulu, because I think Bulu is terrible, and I like that Rillaboom can U-turn and things like that and knock. But at the end of the day, this is such a huge gut to Urshifu's viability, and you're not going to see it as much. It might not even be an OU Pokemon at this point without Grassy Glide, as well as two great coverage moves. It really does hurt it a ton. So I'm really interested to see how why do I keep calling Urshifu? Rillaboom ends up panning out. Speaking of Draft League and speaking of meta-defining Mons, what did they do to Torn T? What did they do to him? They took away 3 of his best moves that you run on every set, or like on most sets. Defog, a little bit more iffy, but Knockoff, Taunt, and Defog. The only thing that I kept from its like tried and true 4 to 5 is Hurricane and U-turn, which again, Torntee's still going to be amazing, right? It's a regen mon with U-turn, it's fast, it disrupts, but it doesn't do it as well as it did before. I think offensive Torntee is actually going to be much more prevalent now. There's a running joke in draft, in like the Draft League community, that Torn is basically just it's a knock bot in the sense that it's basically a dark type and a bug type, with how much it just clicks knock and U-turn and taunt. And then every once in a while you'll throw off the coverage move Hurricane, which obviously is being a little bit hyperbolic, but this is knock and taunt are just 2 of its most prevalent move pool options and are really on 90% of sets. And then Defog's going to slot on in the slot when you don't bring one of those moves, whether they be taunt or knock or something like that. So I think that Nasty Plot offensive Torns are going to have to see a lot more play for this thing to really succeed, because I mean, what else are you going to run? You can't knock and taunt anything anymore. You can still U-turn around, but losing these things for Torn is huge. It's honestly massive. It's going to change the way that it plays immensely. Another Pokemon, man, these segues, they're just rolling off the tongue today. We have Toxapex. So I'm talking about a Pokemon that's going to change the way it plays. I have never been a big Pex guy. Now, I think in a standardized OU metagame, it's an incredible Pokemon. However, in draft, it seems very exploitable, and its passivity can really be taken advantage of, and I think it's a little bit overpriced. But now it is objectively bad, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Again, a lot like Torn, it's losing half of its moveset every game with this. Losing Scald to bait burns on things and punish things for switching in, punishing physical setup, punishing physical Pokemon in general, as well as losing Knock, which is its best utility move in 90% of instances, being able to knock things off and, things of the sort. It's really... I just realized I was in a Discord call. Thank God nobody joined. It's really incredible to see how bad they're nerfing Pex here. Not only did they take away Scald and Knock, they nerfed Recover from 16 PP down to 8 at its max. It is a 5 base 8 5 base 5 PP, and then when you PP max that, it goes up to 8. So not only can it not stick around as long and it can't recover as much, now it can't knock things, now it can't burn things, and you are just a passive regen blob that cannot punish your opponent. Now it still does have great tools and toxic spikes, painful bunger, still has recovery and things like that, but now I just feel like it's so much more likely to be punished and taken advantage of in a lot of instances. So I think these top 3 are incredibly drastic. The next couple aren't as big. I mean, some of them are still really, really big, but in particular, this next Pokemon is not as huge, and that's Hydreigon. And I think it lost a lot of its defensive utility here, losing Roost and Defog. So no more reliable recovery, no more like Stall Breaker, Taunt, Hydras are really going to be putting on work. No more Defog to emergency get rid of hazards. And while it's not detrimental to Hydra, and Hydra typically plays a little bit more offensive in general, it takes away that option, which is never a good thing for a Pokemon, to no longer have that ability to go like Fat Roost Taunt, or Fat Nasty Plot Roost or something like that. Roost is the big one, or Defog just again as an emergency defogger, or like a really fat defogger in a draft league game. I think people really sleep on the fact that Hydra has base 90-90-90 bulk basically, which is really bulky with its defensive typing and reliable recovery, but now we're losing out on that recovery, and things aren't looking as good for our boy Hydreigon here. So I think that's really, really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see much more offensive Hydras in Draft League at the very least. I think in OU, it's just not going to run Nasty Sense anymore, or if it does, it's like Nasty 3 attacks. But typically you'll see it like running like a Specs or a Life Orb, or, you know, a Scarf or something like that with U-turn and 3 coverage moves. But regardless, it's pretty interesting to see Hydra lose some big tools. We want to talk about a Pokemon that really got gutted. Oh my gosh, they just really want Sneasler to be objectively better, because that's what they did to Weavile here. Losing Knockoff and Triple Axle is huge for this little guy. Not only is Knock and Axle just ridiculously strong moves, and Axle, that's really kind of the nerf, is Axle is really, really strong, and losing access to that really strong Ice Stab that 2-hit KOs a lot of resistances and checks after a little bit of chip is terrible. But Knockoff is such a great tool, whether it be punishing switch-ins and getting rid of their leftovers or their helmet or whatever it may be, or even just 2-hit KOing things because of the boost to Knockoff when it gets boosted up. Right now, it only has Night Slash now, which is not a very strong move. Now, Knockoff isn't like world-shattering, but now if you just look in general, Night Slash plus Icicle Crash is just not as threatening as Knockoff Triple Axle. And this thing loses a lot of offensive potency, a lot of that 2-hit KO or OHKO potential, which means it's just not as good because it's so darn frail. So I think this really sucks for a Pokemon that could have really, really thrived in a metagame like this. It's going to be much more offensive. I think it's still going to be good, but it's definitely not going to be as good, if that makes any sense. I wonder if you guys heard my doorbell there. Next up, we have Blissey, and it's just kind of be one of the Pokemon that is, it's kind of just gutted by the, you know, taking away of Teleport. This also extends to Chansey, by the way. But Teleport being gone from its move pool is really upsetting. Really not being able to grab that free momentum after a Wish, which is also gone from its move pool. Wish is actually a Gen 3 tutor move for Chansey that's incredibly hard to get. And now they're not allowing you to transfer things up and keep their move pools, which is why a lot of these Pokemon are losing the boost they're losing. Therefore, we're not going to be able to bring up, you know, technically bring up that Gen 3 Chansey that has Wish, which means no Blisseys and Chanseys are going to Wish anymore with that fat HP stat. And that's really a lot of the use and the viability out of Blissey. Now, it'll still be solid. It'll still be soft boiled, and I'm not actually 100% sure if soft boil is being nerfed on its PP. It might still stay to 16, and that would actually make Blissey, you know, have a cool niche in its own right, being a Pokemon that has a lot of recovery. But otherwise, yeah, it's gonna. Oh, and Aromatherapy's gone, but I think it gets Heal Bell too, so it doesn't really matter, right? Does it get Heal Bell? Yeah, it does. So that doesn't really matter. But and yeah, that's it's really tough for Blissey. It's again a Pokemon that I'm not personally super big on, but I also don't. I don't know. I'm not like. It's good in a standardized metagame and people use it well, but now I think it's just it took a big hit. Just like our good friend Slowbone. This is a Pokemon I do love. We already talked about Teleport getting gone from everything but the Ralts line, which is really unfortunate for Bro. It loved, and this also extends to Slowking. Just they're slightly different, but really very similar in how they you know, would function in a Gen 8 metagame. But losing Teleport, terrible for losing Momentum. Really, really unfortunate. And then losing Scald. Again, these bulky waters are not eating in Scarlet and Violet. It is really sad. The water is cold today, as they say, and it'll be cold for the rest of Generation 9 unless they, for some reason, give everything back Scald that I had before. Scald is now an exclusive move to Volcanion. So, Slowbro, unfortunately, losing it is going to be really unfortunate, and it's spending passive damage and punishing physical attackers and things like that. So, again, I think I was watching a Blunter video where they were talking about Scald in general, and they kind of like talk about like, what if you have a Bisharp in front of a Toxapex or a Slowbro, and you're like, man, I just need this one SD off, and then I win. As long as I don't get burned. Now there's no more burn, and you just get the SD off, and you just win. So they're really, really pushing towards this much more offensive metagame, and this quicker pace of play, which is good and bad in its own rights. I'm not too big on it myself. I might do a video on talking about like why I think like nerfing stall is a bad thing. Let me know if you guys want to see that as well, because I know a lot of people don't like to play stall. I know it's not fun. I don't like playing stall, but I think it's a necessary evil for a healthy metagame to function and thrive. Next up, we got my boy Bubbles. I'm glad I got to use him in Generation 8 before they gutted him. I mean, it's not as bad. Dragonite still always functioned well without reliable flying stab, but losing to Wing Beat is really unfortunate the generation after we ended up getting it. So that's definitely really sad. It also lost Defog and Heal Bell, which were great on defensive sets. I know that D-Knight ran like mostly a predominantly specially defensive set in OU this last generation. I think losing Defog and Heal Bell is a pretty big blow to batter sets like that, but dueling is obviously a big blow to its physically offensive move pool. It can still Hurricane, it can still fly technically, which has worked in the past, you know? And it can still Terra fly, maybe, and like get a Terra Bass flying off or something like that, which I think is cool if Terra doesn't end up being banned. But it's still, like, you know, not a good thing overall. Next up, we have Cresselia, which didn't lose any, like, big moves, at least to my knowledge, but it did lose 10 to each of its bulk, which I think is really interesting. I think this is definitely, like, a doubles thing that they're trying to go after. So it now has 110 defense and 120 SPDF. In singles, I'm not a big Cresselia guy. I talked about it in my Psychic tier list video, which might have been my last one. I think it sucks. I think it's passive and bad in singles and really exploitable in Draft League in particular. A couple people did not agree with me in the comments at all, but a couple people kind of like understood, yeah, Cress isn't that good. But it losing a little bit more bulk just, again, makes it objectively worse. It doesn't gain anything else. There's no benefit to it losing stats, and I figured I should mention it because I think it is an interesting thing to like see these Pokemon getting nerfed for doubles purposes, or maybe even Battle Spot singles purposes, and seeing it trickle over to us in either Smogon, Draft League, whatever it might be. I think that's pretty big. So yeah. And then lastly, today, we're going to talk about Bisharp. He lost Knockoff again, man. And that's really, really unfortunate. Knockoff is just such a good move. And again, it's a lot like Weavile, since now your spammable, like, non-Sucker Punch Dark Stab is Night Slash. And, like, do you really want to be clicking Night Slash, you know? And Knock is, again, a great disruptor. It punishes switch-ins. It's just an incredible overall move. And the fact that they made it so restricted this generation is really unfortunate. Now, there are a couple other Pokemon that I think got some considerable nerfs, like Crocodile lost Knockoff, and I think that's unfortunate, but Crocodile also got some cool buffs. There's a lot of Pokemon that got great buffs, so let me know if you guys want to see that video in the comments below, because I would love to go over that video. I think a couple people already beat me to it already, but I want to get this one at least for you guys, and I'd love to talk about the buffs. I would love to maybe talk about why stall is needed in the metagame, or why fatter playstyles are not a bad thing inherently for metagames, and, you know, we shouldn't, you know, hate them off rip just because of that. But yeah, again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, drop a like if you're new, drop a sub, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.